I watched through my kitchen window as the HOA president of Maplewood Estates loaded the last of my split firewood into the back of her silver Lexus SUV, and something inside me snapped. My name is Tyler Zimmerman, and I had just spent 3 weekends splitting, stacking, and organizing 2 full cords of premium oak firewood in my backyard. The wood had cost me $800, delivered as unsplit logs, and I had put in countless hours of back-breaking work to get it ready for the brutal Montana winter ahead. We lived in Billings, where temperatures could drop below zero, and that firewood was essential for heating my home and keeping my family warm. The woman brazenly stealing my property was none other than Brenda Patterson, the self-appointed guardian of neighborhood standards and president of our homeowners association. She was in her late 40s, always wore designer activewear despite never actually exercising, and had a talent for making everyone's life miserable with her constant complaints and citations for the smallest infractions. I rushed outside, my boots crunching on the November frost. "Brenda, what the hell do you think you're doing?" She turned to face me with that infuriating expression of entitled superiority she always wore. "Oh, Tyler, good morning. I'm confiscating this eyesore. That's my firewood. I paid for it and split every piece myself." According to HOA Covenant Section 12, subsection 4, all outdoor storage must be approved by the Architectural Review Committee. You never submitted the proper forms. She pulled out a folder from her passenger seat and waved it at me. "I issued you a violation notice 2 weeks ago. Since you failed to comply, I'm exercising my authority to remove the offending materials." I felt my blood pressure rising. That notice said I needed to move the woodpile 3 feet to the left because it was supposedly visible from the street. It said nothing about you stealing my property. "I'm not stealing anything. This wood will be donated to a charitable organization, and you'll receive a tax-deductible receipt." She smiled that fake smile that never reached her cold eyes. "You should be thanking me, really. Plus, you'll be saving money on your taxes." "I don't want a tax receipt. I want my firewood back, right now." Brenda climbed into her Lexus and started the engine. "Take it up with the HOA board if you have a complaint. We meet the 3rd Tuesday of every month. You know where to find us." She drove off, leaving me standing in my driveway, furious and in disbelief. My wife Sarah had come outside and witnessed the last part of the confrontation. "Did she just steal our firewood?" Sarah asked, wrapping her cardigan tighter against the cold wind. "She sure did. And she thinks the HOA gives her the right to do it." That afternoon, I did something I should have done months ago when Brenda first started her campaign of harassment against us. I called a lawyer. My buddy from college, Marcus Chen, had gone into civil litigation and practiced in Billings. When I explained the situation, he actually laughed. "She physically took your firewood, like drove to your house and loaded it up. Every single piece. 2 full cords, that's months of work and hundreds of dollars." Marcus stopped laughing. "Okay, that's actually theft. HOAs have some authority, but they absolutely cannot just take your personal property without due process. Even if you violated some covenant, the proper procedure would be to fine you, and if you didn't pay, they'd put a lien on your property. They can't just repossess your stuff like they're a repo man. Did you get any of this on video?" I felt a surge of hope. "My security camera system, it records everything. Perfect. Email me that footage, along with any documentation you have about the wood purchase, the violation notices, and all your HOA correspondence. I'm going to send Brenda Patterson a very serious letter, and we're going to see about getting your property back and making sure she understands she can't do this." The next morning, I sent Marcus everything he needed. The security footage was crystal clear, showing Brenda spending nearly an hour loading my neatly stacked firewood into her vehicle. The timestamp, my property clearly visible, her face unmistakable. I also sent him the receipt from Mountain State Timber for the $800 worth of oak logs, photos of the woodpile before and after, and the violation notice that made no mention of confiscation or removal. Marcus worked fast. By Wednesday afternoon, he had sent a demand letter to Brenda Patterson personally and to the HOA board. The letter was beautiful in its directness. It stated that Brenda had committed theft, that the HOA had no legal authority to confiscate personal property, and that she had 24 hours to return all the firewood in the same condition or face a civil lawsuit. Marcus also sent copies to every board member and the HOA's management company. I received Brenda's response the following day, but not in the way I expected. Instead of returning my wood, she showed up at my door with two other board members, Janet Holloway and Craig Morrison. All three of them looked stern and prepared for battle. "Tyler, we need to talk about your harassment of our HOA president," Janet began. She was a thin woman in her 60s who always seemed to be clutching a clipboard. "Harassment? She stole my firewood." Craig, a heavy-set man with a red face that suggested either high blood pressure or too much bourbon, shook his head. "The HOA acted within its authority to maintain neighborhood standards. Your aggressive response and legal threats are creating a hostile environment. Where's my firewood?" I asked simply. Brenda stepped forward. "It's been donated. I have the receipt right here. You can claim a $700 deduction on your next tax return." $700. I paid $800 just for the logs, not to mention the labor. The charitable organization assessed its value at $700. That's what it was worth. Brenda's tone suggested the matter was closed. "You had no right to take it in the first place. My attorney explained that clearly." "Your attorney is mistaken about HOA authority," Janet interjected. "We've consulted with the HOA's legal counsel, and we're prepared to counterclaim for the emotional distress you've caused Brenda with these baseless accusations." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Get off my property, all of you, right now." "We're leaving," Brenda said coldly. "But understand that you're now under enhanced scrutiny. Every single covenant violation will be documented and fined. Your lawn, your mailbox, your garbage cans, your vehicle parking. Everything. We will make your life very difficult if you continue down this path." "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise," she replied. After they left, I immediately called Marcus and recounted the entire conversation. He was quiet for a moment and I could hear him typing. "Okay, a few things. First, they're bluffing about the HOA's legal counsel. Most HOAs this size use a management company and don't have attorneys on retainer. Second, that threat about enhanced scrutiny is actually helpful to us. It establishes retaliation, which is going to look terrible in court. Third, we're filing suit tomorrow. You really think we can win?" "Tyler, they stole your property. This isn't complicated. Yes, we can win. But I need you to document everything from this point forward. Every interaction, every notice, every piece of mail. They're going to try to bury you in violations, and we're going to use that against them." Marcus was right. Over the next 2 weeks, I received 7 violation notices. My mailbox was supposedly the wrong shade of black. My truck was parked 6 inches over the property line into the street. My trash cans were visible from the road for 15 minutes longer than allowed on collection day. A package left on my porch for 3 hours constituted unsightly clutter. A single leaf from my tree that had blown into the neighbor's yard was my responsibility to retrieve. The oil spot on my driveway from when I changed my oil needed immediate professional cleaning. My house number needed to be exactly 4 inches tall, and mine measured 3 3/4 inches. Each violation came with a $50 fine, some with 100. They were bleeding me slowly, and Brenda was enjoying every second of it. I'd see her driving past my house multiple times a day, phone in hand, taking pictures. Sarah was getting stressed. Maybe we should just drop it. Find firewood somewhere else. This is making our lives miserable. No, I said firmly. If we back down now, she wins. She'll keep doing this to us and everyone else. Someone has to stand up to her. Marcus filed our lawsuit in Montana's 13th Judicial District Court in early December. We sued Brenda Patterson personally for theft and conversion, seeking the return of the firewood or its replacement value, plus compensation for the labor I'd invested in splitting it, plus our legal fees. We also named the HOA as a defendant for enabling and ratifying her actions. The lawsuit hit the Maplewood Estates community like a bomb. Within days, I started getting calls and visits from other neighbors. It turned out I wasn't the only one Brenda had victimized. Tom Brennan from 2 streets over told me Brenda had ordered his children's playhouse removed because it violated the temporary structures clause, even though it was a permanent installation that had been there for 3 years. She'd hired a crew and billed him $2,000 for the demolition. Lisa Martinez shared that Brenda had reported her daughter's car to the police as abandoned because it had been parked in their driveway for more than 30 days without moving. The car belonged to her daughter, who was deployed overseas with the Army. It took Lisa hours to sort it out with the police and prevent the vehicle from being towed. Robert and Helen Kingston, an elderly couple on fixed income, had been fined repeatedly for their lawn being a 1/4 inch too long. The fines had accumulated to over $3,000, and the HOA had placed a lien on their house. The stories kept coming. Brenda Patterson had been running the HOA like her personal fiefdom, and people were terrified of her. But now, with a lawsuit filed, others began finding their courage. Marcus suggested we might want to consider a class action, but I wanted to keep focused on my case. Still, he took notes on everything people told us. Some of it might be useful. The HOA's response to our lawsuit was aggressive and nasty. They hired a law firm out of Helena, Barrett and Sullivan, and their attorney, Patricia Barrett, filed a motion to dismiss, arguing that the HOA's covenants gave them broad authority to enforce community standards, including the removal of non-compliant items. They also filed a counterclaim against me for violating the covenants, for harassment, and for defamation of Brenda Patterson's character. The defamation claim was particularly galling. Apparently, by telling my neighbors that Brenda had stolen my firewood, I had damaged her reputation in the community. They were seeking $50,000 in damages. Marcus assured me it was all posturing. They're trying to scare you into dropping the case. Standard intimidation tactics. Don't worry, we've got the facts on our side. The preliminary hearing was set for January 15th. Montana winters are brutal, and I was heating my house with an electric space heater and whatever wood I could scavenge or buy at inflated prices from local suppliers. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was spending more money on replacement firewood while fighting to get my original supply back. 2 days before the hearing, something unexpected happened. I received a visit from Craig Morrison, one of the board members who'd come with Brenda to threaten me. He looked nervous and kept glancing around as if worried about being seen. "Tyler, can I come in? I need to talk to you privately." I let him in, curious. Sarah made coffee while Craig sat at our kitchen table, fidgeting with his hands. "I'm resigning from the HOA board," he said quietly. I wanted you to know, and I wanted to apologize. Brenda convinced us that you were the problem, that you were a troublemaker trying to undermine the community. But after your lawsuit, I started looking into things more carefully. She's been acting without board approval on a lot of these enforcement actions. We rubber-stamped her decisions without really examining them. Why are you telling me this? Because I think you're going to win, and when you do, the HOA is going to be liable for a lot of money. Money that comes from all our dues from the whole community. Brenda's made enemies of half the neighborhood, and it's not right. I also wanted you to know that the firewood was never donated to charity. I set down my coffee cup. What? She kept it. It's stacked in her backyard right now. I saw it when I went to her house for a board meeting. She used the HOA truck to move it from the donation site back to her place. She said the charity didn't want it after all, but I called them. They never received any wood. This was huge. Marcus needed to know immediately. Would you be willing to testify to that? I asked. Craig hesitated, then nodded. Yes, I'm done protecting her. This has gone too far. After Craig left, I called Marcus and filled him in. He was ecstatic. This changes everything. She didn't just take your property, she lied about donating it. That shows intent and bad faith. We're going to use this. The hearing took place in a courthouse in Billings that was overheated and stuffy despite the freezing temperatures outside. Judge Raymond Kowalski presided, a stern-looking man in his 60s with silver hair and reading glasses perched on his nose. He had a reputation for not tolerating nonsense. Patricia Barrett argued passionately for the HOA's position. She claimed the covenants granted broad enforcement powers, that the violation had been properly noticed, and that I had failed to comply within the required time frame. She argued the HOA had acted reasonably and within its authority. Your Honor, homeowners associations exist to maintain property values and community standards. Mr. Zimmerman's woodpile was visible from the street, unsightly, and in violation of clearly stated covenants he agreed to when he purchased his property. The HOA followed proper procedures, and Mr. Zimmerman's refusal to comply left the board no choice but to remove the offending material. When it was Marcus's turn, he calmly dismantled their argument piece by piece. Your Honor, even if we accept that Mr. Zimmerman violated an HOA covenant, which we dispute, the HOA's remedy is not self-help. They cannot simply take someone's personal property. Montana law is clear on this. If they believed Mr. Zimmerman violated the covenants, they could fine him. If he didn't pay the fine, they could place a lien on his property. They could even sue for specific performance to force compliance. What they cannot do is commit theft. He presented the security footage, which the judge watched with increasing interest. Brenda was clearly visible loading the wood, piece by piece, into her vehicle. It took her multiple trips. Marcus continued. We have documentation showing Mr. Zimmerman paid $800 for the wood and invested significant labor in splitting it. The HOA president, Miss Patterson, claimed the wood was donated to charity. We have testimony from Mr. Craig Morrison, a former HOA board member, that this was false. The wood is currently in Miss Patterson's possession at her personal residence. The judge looked up sharply. The defendant still has the plaintiff's property. Yes, Your Honor. Patricia Barrett quickly interjected, Your Honor, if there was confusion about the wood's disposition, we can certainly remedy that. The HOA is willing to provide Mr. Zimmerman with a monetary settlement equivalent to the wood's value to resolve this matter. How generous, the judge said dryly. Miss Barrett, help me understand your position. Your client took Mr. Zimmerman's property without his permission, claimed it was donated when it was not, and is currently using it themselves. In what universe is that not theft? Your Honor, the HOA's intent was always to enforce the covenants, not to deprive Mr. Zimmerman of his property permanently. This was an administrative action that perhaps was not executed perfectly, but there was no criminal intent. Judge Kowalski removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. I've been on the bench for 23 years, and I've seen a lot of HOA disputes. Most of them are petty nonsense that should never come before a court. But this case is different. Miss Barrett, your client didn't just overstep their authority. They committed what appears to be clear theft and then lied about it. I'm going to give you until tomorrow morning to return every single piece of wood to Mr. Zimmerman's property, properly stacked as it was. If that wood is not returned by 9 a.m. tomorrow, I'm granting summary judgment for the plaintiff on the theft claim and will move directly to a hearing on damages. Patricia Barrett looked like she'd been slapped. Your Honor, we request more time. You've had months to do the right thing. You have until tomorrow at 9. Court is adjourned. That evening, I received an angry call from Brenda. I hope you're satisfied. You've humiliated me and cost the HOA thousands in legal fees. All you had to do was not steal my firewood. I was enforcing the covenants. You kept it for yourself, Brenda. That's theft, no matter how you try to spin it. She hung up on me. The next morning at 7:30, a truck pulled up to my house. 3 workers began unloading firewood and stacking it in my backyard. Brenda sat in her car, watching with an expression of pure hatred. The workers were quick and professional, and by 8:45 the job was done. I walked outside to inspect the work. It was my wood, I was certain of it. I'd marked several pieces with spray paint on the bottom, and those marks were there. But the amount looked short. I counted the stacks. It was maybe 3/4 of what she'd taken. 1.5 cords, not 2 full cords. I walked over to her car window. She rolled it down an inch. This isn't all of it. Where's the rest? That's all I have. I used some of it. You'll have to take it up with your lawyer. She drove off before I could respond. Marcus was not happy when I told him. She used it. She's admitting she used your property for her own benefit. That's perfect. That establishes conversion beyond any doubt. At a follow-up hearing that afternoon, Judge Kowalski was even less amused than Marcus. Miss Barrett, where is the rest of Mr. Zimmerman's wood? Your Honor, my client returned what she had. Unfortunately, some of the wood had already been burned for heat before this dispute escalated to litigation. So your client stole property, used it for her own benefit, and is now unable to return it all. That's not how we would characterize it, Your Honor. I don't care how you characterize it. That's what happened. The judge looked at his notes. Mr. Chen, what are your damages? Marcus stood. Your Honor, we're seeking replacement cost for the full 2 cords of wood, which based on current market prices is approximately $1,200. We're also seeking compensation for the labor Mr. Zimmerman invested in splitting the wood, which we estimate at 40 hours of work at a reasonable rate of $30 per hour, totaling $1,200. Additionally, we're seeking our attorney fees and costs, which currently stand at $4,500, total damages of $7,900. Your Honor, those damages are excessive, Patricia Barrett argued. The wood itself cost $800. Even accounting for inflation and current prices, the value is no more than $1,000. As for labor, Mr. Zimmerman split the wood for his own use, not as a commercial venture. That labor has no compensable value, and attorney fees are inappropriate in a case like this. Judge Kowalski looked at me. Mr. Zimmerman, stand up, please. I stood. Did you split 2 cords of wood by hand? Yes, Your Honor. How long did that take you? About 3 weekends, maybe 30 to 40 hours total. Would you have done that work if you'd known Miss Patterson was going to take the wood for herself? Absolutely not, Your Honor. Of course not. Sit down. He turned back to the attorneys. Here's my ruling. Miss Patterson took property that was not hers, claimed she was donating it to charity but actually kept it for herself. She used a portion of that property before returning the rest. This is textbook conversion. Mr. Zimmerman is entitled to be made whole. He paused to write some notes. I'm awarding $1,200 for the replacement cost of 2 cords of seasoned, split oak wood at current market rates. I'm awarding $800 for labor, which is reasonable compensation for 40 hours of work, even if it was done personally. The notion that labor has no value if you do it yourself is absurd. If Miss Patterson had hired someone to split that wood, she would have paid them. Patricia Barrett tried to interrupt, but the judge held up his hand. I'm not finished. As for attorney fees, Montana law allows for fee awards in cases involving theft or conversion where the defendant acted in bad faith. Miss Patterson clearly acted in bad faith. She took the property without permission, lied about what she did with it, used it herself, and refused to return all of it. This entire situation was caused by her unlawful actions. Therefore, I'm awarding the full amount of attorney fees and costs requested, $4,500. Total judgment of $6,500 against Miss Brenda Patterson personally. Brenda, sitting in the front row of the gallery, made a sound like she'd been punched. Furthermore, the judge continued, I'm ordering that this judgment cannot be paid from HOA funds. This is Miss Patterson's personal liability for her personal actions. The HOA may face separate liability for ratifying her conduct, but that's a different matter. This judgment is against Brenda Patterson as an individual. Your Honor, we request time to appeal, Patricia Barrett said. You can appeal if you want, but the judgment stands pending appeal. You have 30 days to pay, Miss Patterson. If you don't pay, Mr. Chen can begin collection proceedings, including garnishing wages and placing liens on your property. He banged his gavel. We're adjourned. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Several of my neighbors who had come to watch cheered quietly. Brenda stood up, her face red, and stormed out with Patricia Barrett hurrying after her. Marcus shook my hand. Congratulations. That was a complete victory. Will she appeal? She might try, but she'll lose. The facts are too clear, and Judge Kowalski's ruling is sound. My guess is she'll pay. Over the next few days, the judgment became the talk of Maplewood Estates. The story spread quickly. The HOA president had been ordered to pay over $6,000 for stealing firewood. People were delighted. Brenda had terrorized the neighborhood for years, and finally someone had stood up to her and won. But Brenda wasn't done fighting. Instead of paying the judgment, she tried a different tactic. She called an emergency HOA meeting and proposed that the association pay her judgment since she'd been acting in her official capacity as president. The meeting was packed. Nearly every homeowner showed up, which was unprecedented. Our HOA meetings usually drew maybe 10 people. This time, over 60 homeowners crammed into the community center. Brenda stood at the podium, trying to maintain her composure. As you all know, I've been the target of a frivolous lawsuit by Tyler Zimmerman. While I was simply trying to enforce our community covenants, he decided to weaponize the legal system against me. I'm here tonight to ask the board to approve payment of this unjust judgment from HOA reserves, as I was acting on behalf of all of us to maintain our property values. Before any board member could respond, Tom Brennan stood up. Point of order. Brenda, you stole his firewood and kept it for yourself. How is that acting on behalf of the community? I removed a covenant violation, she snapped back. And then burned it in your own fireplace, someone else called out. Lisa Martinez stood. I move that we remove Brenda Patterson as HOA president immediately for gross misconduct and abuse of authority. I second that motion, said Robert Kingston. Brenda tried to maintain control. That's not a proper motion. It's not on the agenda. Actually, Janet Holloway said quietly, according to our bylaws, any board member can be removed by a 2/3 vote of homeowners present at a properly noticed meeting. This meeting was properly noticed. I vote yes on the removal. The remaining board members, clearly seeing which way the wind was blowing, also voted yes. Then the homeowners voted. It wasn't even close. 58 voted to remove Brenda, 3 voted against, and 2 abstained. Brenda's face went from red to white. You can't do this. I've given 5 years to this community. 5 years of harassment and abuse, someone called out. You're a bully and a thief, another voice added. Brenda grabbed her papers and stormed out of the meeting, but not before delivering one final threat. You haven't seen the last of me. I'm going to sue every single one of you for defamation and wrongful termination. After she left, the meeting continued. The homeowners voted to install Tom Brennan as interim president, with Lisa Martinez and Robert Kingston joining Janet Holloway on the board. Their first order of business was to review every fine, and Lee and Brenda had imposed over the past 2 years. It was worse than anyone had imagined. Brenda had collected over $80,000 in fines, much of it for petty or questionable violations. Some homeowners had been fined repeatedly for the same alleged violation, even after fixing the problem. The lien on the Kingstons' house was based on fines that had never been properly approved by the full board. Tom proposed that the HOA refund all fines from the past year and cancel all outstanding violations unless they represented genuine safety or structural issues. The motion passed unanimously. Meanwhile, Brenda continued to refuse to pay my judgment. The 30-day deadline passed, and Marcus began collection proceedings. He filed for a writ of execution, allowing us to seize Brenda's assets to satisfy the debt. This is when things got interesting. When the county sheriff went to serve the writ, he discovered something unexpected. Brenda had cleaned out her bank accounts and transferred her Lexus to her sister's name. She was hiding her assets to avoid paying. Marcus went back to court, this time asking for sanctions and requesting that the judge hold Brenda in contempt. He also filed a motion to set aside the fraudulent transfer of the vehicle. Judge Kowalski was not pleased. Miss Patterson, are you telling me you have no ability to pay a $6,000 judgment? Brenda, now representing herself because she'd fired Patricia Barrett, tried to look sympathetic. Your Honor, I'm a single woman on a fixed income. That judgment has caused me severe financial hardship. I simply don't have the money. Yet you drove here in a new Lexus registered to your sister. When was that transfer made? I sold it to her. I needed the money for living expenses. How much did she pay you? That's a private family matter. No, it's not. You're under oath. How much did your sister pay you for a vehicle worth approximately $40,000? Brenda hesitated. $1. The courtroom went silent. Even the clerk stopped typing. You sold a $40,000 vehicle to your sister for $1, days after a judgment was entered against you, and you expect me to believe that's legitimate. It was a gift. Family members can gift property to each other. Marcus stood. Your Honor, that's textbook fraudulent transfer under Montana law. It's a transparent attempt to place assets beyond the reach of creditors. We're asking the court to void the transfer and hold Miss Patterson in contempt. Judge Kowalski agreed. He voided the transfer, ordered the Lexus returned to Brenda's name so it could be seized to satisfy part of the judgment, and fined Brenda an additional $2,000 for contempt of court. He also ordered her to appear weekly to report on her job search and income, because he wanted to ensure she was making good faith efforts to pay the debt. Miss Patterson, you seem to think you can simply ignore court orders you don't like. You can't. If you continue to hide assets or fail to make payments, I will consider whether jail time is appropriate. Do you understand me? Yes, Your Honor, Brenda said quietly. All her bluster gone, over the following weeks, the sheriff seized and sold Brenda's Lexus at auction. The proceeds, along with wage garnishment from her part-time job at a real estate office, began satisfying the judgment. It was slow going, but the money was coming. Meanwhile, the new HOA board was working to repair the damage Brenda had caused. They refunded over $40,000 in questionable fines, canceled the lien on the Kingston's house, and adopted new procedures requiring board approval for any enforcement action over $100. They also hired a professional management company to handle the day-to-day operations, removing the possibility of one person having too much power. The changes were dramatic and immediate. The atmosphere in Maplewood Estates transformed. People stopped living in fear of petty citations and started actually talking to their neighbors again. Kids played outside without parents worrying that a ball hitting a fence would result in a fine. Families decorated for holidays without wondering if their inflatable snowman violated some obscure covenant. But Brenda wasn't done causing problems. In March, I received notice that she was suing me in small claims court for defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. She claimed that my lawsuit and the resulting publicity had destroyed her reputation, caused her to lose her position with the HOA, and made her a pariah in the community. Marcus reviewed the complaint and laughed. This is going nowhere. Truth is an absolute defense to defamation, and you never said anything false about her. Plus, she can't claim damages from consequences of her own actions, but will have to respond. The small claims hearing was set for April 22nd. In the meantime, I learned that Brenda had filed similar suits against Tom Brennan, Lisa Martinez, and 3 other neighbors who had spoken publicly about her conduct. She was trying to silence everyone and get some money in the process. This backfired spectacularly. Rather than intimidating people, it energized them. All the defendants banded together, shared legal research, and prepared a coordinated defense. Some hired attorneys, others represented themselves, but everyone was determined not to let Brenda weaponize the court system. My hearing came first. I showed up with Marcus and a file full of documentation. Brenda appeared alone, with a stack of papers and a determined expression. The small claims judge, a patient woman named Judge Melissa Torres, listened to Brenda's claims. Brenda argued that I had maliciously spread lies about her, turned the neighborhood against her, and ruined her life out of spite. He told everyone I was a thief, but I was just doing my job as HOA president, Brenda said, her voice cracking with what seemed like genuine emotion. He made me out to be a monster when all I wanted was to keep our community beautiful and safe. Because of him, I lost my position, my reputation, and my friends. I can't even go to the grocery store without people whispering about me. Judge Torres looked at me. What's your response? Your Honor, I told people the truth. Miss Patterson took my firewood without permission. A judge found that she committed theft and conversion. Everything I said about her was factual and based on documented evidence. I have the court judgment right here. I handed her the judgment from Judge Kowalski's court. She read it carefully, then looked at Brenda. Miss Patterson, you're suing for defamation, but the statements you claim are defamatory were found to be true by another court. You did take his firewood. You did keep it for yourself. A judge awarded him damages for your conduct. How can true statements be defamatory? He turned people against me. He made them hate me. That's not defamation. That's people reacting to your actions. Judge Torres shook her head. I'm dismissing this case. Miss Patterson, you can't use the courts to punish someone for telling the truth about you. If your reputation is damaged, it's because of what you did, not because Mr. Zimmerman talked about it. Brenda tried to argue, but the judge was firm. Case dismissed. Over the next month, all the other small claims cases Brenda filed met similar fates. Every judge dismissed them, some with warnings to Brenda about filing frivolous lawsuits. By June, she had racked up more than $3,000 in court costs and had lost every case. The stress seemed to break something in her. In July, I saw her at the grocery store, and she looked like a different person. She'd lost weight, her hair was gray instead of the dyed blonde she'd maintained, and she moved like someone much older. When she saw me, she quickly turned and went down a different aisle. I felt a momentary twinge of pity, but then I remembered the months of harassment, the stolen firewood, the financial stress, and the dozens of other people she'd victimized. She had done this to herself. By August, Brenda had paid off my judgment in full. The combination of the Lexus sale, wage garnishment, and monthly payments had satisfied the debt. Marcus sent me a check for $6,500, and that was it. The legal case was over, but the story wasn't quite finished. In September, several former HOA members filed a class action lawsuit against Brenda personally, seeking repayment of all the improper fines she'd collected over the years. The lawsuit alleged she had abused her position for personal enrichment and had violated state consumer protection laws. I wasn't part of that suit, but I followed it with interest. Brenda tried to defend herself but eventually agreed to a settlement. She admitted no wrongdoing but agreed to pay back $30,000 over 5 years. She also agreed never to serve on an HOA board again in Montana. As fall arrived and I started using my fireplace again, I thought about how a simple woodpile had exposed years of abuse and led to genuine change in our community. The new HOA board was functioning well, treating homeowners with respect, and focusing on actual community improvement rather than petty enforcement. I'd bought and split another 2 cords of firewood that summer, and this time I made sure to submit the proper paperwork to the Architectural Review Committee. Tom approved it with a note. "Looks great. Stay warm this winter." Sarah and I were sitting by the fireplace one November evening when she asked, "Do you think Brenda learned anything from all this?" "I don't know. I hope so. But even if she didn't, everyone else did. People saw that you don't have to accept abuse from petty tyrants, even when they're in positions of authority. You can fight back, and sometimes you win." Was it worth all the stress? I thought about that. The months of harassment, the legal bills before we won, the time and energy spent fighting. But then I thought about the $80,000 in fines that had been refunded, the families who were no longer living in fear, and the community that was slowly healing. "Yeah," I said. It was worth it. The fire crackled, burning wood I'd split myself, wood that nobody would ever take from me again. Outside, snow was falling, covering Maplewood Estates in a clean white blanket. Tomorrow, kids would build snowmen in their yards without worrying about HOA violations. People would put up Christmas decorations without fear of citations. The neighborhood felt like a community again. In December, the HOA held its annual holiday party, something that had been canceled for the past 3 years during Brenda's reign. Nearly everyone attended. There was food, music, and genuine warmth between neighbors who had been strangers or adversaries. Tom gave a short speech thanking everyone for their patience during the transition, and for working together to rebuild the community. Then he raised his glass. I want to make a toast to Tyler Zimmerman. Most of us were too scared to stand up to the bullying and abuse. Tyler wasn't. Because he fought back, we all benefited. Here's to having the courage to do what's right, even when it's hard. People applauded, and I felt embarrassed but also proud. I hadn't set out to be a hero or a community advocate. I just wanted my firewood back. But sometimes standing up for yourself means standing up for everyone. As the party wound down and Sarah and I walked home through the snow, I noticed something. Every house we passed was decorated for Christmas in their own unique style. Some had elaborate light displays, others had simple wreaths. Some had inflatable characters, others had nativity scenes. It was chaotic and mismatched and absolutely perfect. That's what a real community should look like. Not uniform, not controlled by one person's vision, but diverse and authentic. People expressing themselves, living their lives, and respecting their neighbors without living in fear. The legal battle over firewood had become about something much bigger. It had become about dignity, respect, and the right to live peacefully in your own home without harassment. And in the end, we'd won. Not just in court, but in the ways that really mattered. I never saw Brenda Patterson again after that encounter in the grocery store. I heard she moved away from Billings the following spring, relocating to somewhere in Idaho to be near family. Some people said she was bitter to the end, convinced she'd been wronged. Others said she was just broken and wanted to start fresh somewhere nobody knew her history. I didn't really care either way. She was gone, and that was enough. The following winter was peaceful. I split another 2 cords of wood, stacked them neatly in my backyard, and used them to keep my family warm through the Montana cold. No one bothered me. No one sent violation notices. No one took what wasn't theirs. Tom Brennan proved to be an excellent HOA president. He served 1 term and then stepped aside, establishing a healthy precedent of rotation and shared responsibility. The HOA became what it should have always been. A simple administrative body handling common area maintenance and organizing community events. Nothing more, nothing less. Years later, when people asked me about the Firewood case, they usually wanted to know if I regretted the fight. They'd heard it had been stressful and expensive before we won. They wondered if I should have just let it go. My answer was always the same. Some things are worth fighting for, not because they're valuable in dollars and cents, but because they're about principles. If I'd backed down, Brenda would have kept abusing her power. Other families would have suffered. The cycle would have continued. Instead, by standing up for myself, I helped break that cycle. I proved that HOA boards aren't above the law, that homeowners have rights, and that theft is theft no matter what title you hold. The firewood itself was long gone, burned to ash and smoke. But what it represented endured: justice, accountability, community. The simple idea that you can't just take what isn't yours, no matter what excuse you make. And that was a lesson worth fighting for.